In this video, I'm going to go over a few more options for the Houdini tree nodes that were not covered in the side effects videos, or expand off of them a little bit more, because the trees that you get after some of those videos are really quite large. One of the ones that I did was about 300 or 400 megabytes, which was much larger than I wanted it to be. So I'm going to go over how to optimize it a bit. One of the first things I do, I have the tree controller here, is under meshing. I'm going to change the intersection behavior to none. By default, it is on Boolean and normal blending, and it does look a little bit better, but it will increase your poly count a bit. This one's not super important to turn on or off, but I'm going to keep it off. It does run a little bit faster. And then under resolution, this one is quite important. The smaller the number over here, the more subdivisions you're going to have. So you will get a lot more detail. It can look really nice. However, it's going to be very, very poly heavy very quickly. So if you're doing less important trees, something for the background, or something you're not going to have a very good look at, definitely consider turning up these numbers considerably so you can reduce that poly count. You could have a high poly and a low poly one and use that for baking if you wanted to. For material, I'm going to leave it as is. For my tree graph, I just have my tree controller going into a trunk. And then branches, and more branches. And then I have the leaf generator with the tree simple leaf going into it. All of that is going into an ROP geometry export node. And I'm just going to export this real quick so we can see what it is. And I'm just going to call this tree1.obj. And when it's exported, this one will be relatively small, hopefully. Oops, and helps if you hit save. There you go. All right, so this one is currently 28 megabytes, so not terrible. We'll go into Maya in a little bit and Painter and go over how to fix that up. But a few other things you can optimize a bit are on the leaf. So if I turn on my wireframe, and let's just look at the leaf. On the leaf itself, you do have the size and length and width, but you also have line segments. And these leaves are going to be repeated quite a lot. So turning it down can really save you hundreds of thousands of polys. So I'm just going to turn this down to 4 segments, maybe actually 3. We'll do 3 for now. And from afar, it will look very similar. And if I just export this and overwrite it, we've gone down now to about 14 megabytes. So removed 10 overall. So little changes like that can save a lot of space. If you want your tree to look a little bit bushier and bigger, you can make those leaves a bit bigger. But one thing that's really nice is having some textures on your tree. And you can visualize them a bit when you are in Houdini. Actually, you can a lot, but simply we can do it with... I've downloaded just a leaf texture, which is just a PNG of a leaf. There's no background. And then I went to Polyhaven and downloaded a tiling texture of some bark. And to see what these look like in Houdini, going to hit tab and create a material, a labs quick material, which is called quick material. And I'm going to put it in between the left node, between my last tree branch generator and my leaf. So if I just pop it over here, it'll make that connection. And on it you have base color, opacity, normal, roughness, all the PBR textures. And under base color, I'm going to click on the little white folder icon. and I'm going to look for the texture for the diffuse and put it on. So now we can see that the UVs that it has created are working. We have a nice spark texture. I'm not worrying about normal or roughness, anything like that. We'll do our final texture in Painter. Then I'm going to do something similar for the leaf. So I'm going to make another material and put that in between. And search for my base color, my leaf. And you might notice that my leaves are not looking great. They are at the wrong orientation. So if I visualize just the leaf with material, you can see that the stem is going this way and it's just going the wrong way. Easiest way to fix this is just open up your leaf, and I'm just going to rotate it. And if I close, will it save? There we go. And when you save that and load it back in, it should work much better. Let me resave that. And then in Houdini, I'm going to just bring in the correct leaf. So now we can see that the stem is going in the correct direction. And this is where you can change the leaf size to kind of match whatever you're going for a little bit better. If you need some more subdivisions for it to fit better, you can see that I actually do get a lot more of that texture in there. You can definitely up the resolution a bit. You can also change a fair amount of stuff on the leaf with these different graphs. I'm going to leave it like this and getting most of the leaf in. So now when I visualize the tree, I'm going to get leaves coming out of it almost properly. Some of them will be a little bit hovering far away. That's because if we go back to my quick material here, we can see that stem doesn't go all the way down. You could fix that if you just crop the image so the bottom of this stem was the bottom of the image. It would then map on it a lot better. But for now, this is looking okay. So I have a tree and I have some leaves on it. I'm going to export this again. Save to disk. So it went up a little bit because I did increase the resolution of the leaf. It's now just under 17 megabytes. It's still pretty small. I'm not going to go into Maya and Painter yet because there's a few other ways we can do our leaves. I'm going to bring this up. I have this whole other graph here. And this is something that one of the side effects tutorials went over. I have just another tree graph making some branches, putting material on it, and making more leaves. You can use this as your leaf. So I'm just going to bring this entire graph over here and then pause the video for a moment because it'll take a bit to load. There we go. So you can see I have a much fuller, much just kind of bigger tree with an entire new tree trunk and generator for the leaves. It's going to be a little bit bigger because it has a lot more stuff. Let's save to disk. Still saving. So it finally finished exporting. And it is, with that one change, just over 7 gigabytes. So not exactly game ready and not really efficient for most projects. So I'm going to delete that connection and go back to the smaller, more efficient tree. But let's go over how we can get something looking really close without bringing our poly count up to 7 gigabytes. So I have the leaf and I have it turning into this little tree. And I want to bake this onto a flat plane. I could export this to Painter and do it all there and then bring it back into Houdini, but Houdini does have a built-in baker. And to do so, I'm going to make a new node, a grid, and let me just, I'm going to make a new one just for the demo and just move things around a little bit. Go. And make a grid. Here we go. And I'm going to open up the rotate tool. I have my grid, and I'm gonna, you have the rotate tool down here, but a little bit further down, you have the show handles, so little XYZ arrows, and this gives us a little bit of everything. And on the red circle, I can rotate it and see that it just rotates normally. If you hold down Control, it will snap to 45 degrees, so you can get to 90 degrees nice and easy. And I want to do this so it matches my leaves. So over here with this little leaf graph, I'm going to click the third button, the purple one, so I can see what the kind of outline of that tree looks like. And I'm going to push this plane back so it's sitting just behind it. And then I'm going to scale it down so it's not a lot bigger. And you can change your camera view to the front view by hitting spacebar, holding down spacebar and 3 on the keyboard. And that will get you your front view. And then you have these little arrows on the side of your plane or your grid so you can resize it. And I want the bottom to be at the base of the tree about. There we go. Also, when you're in this tool, you can't just right and left click to move the camera around. But if you hold down Alt, you can zoom in and out, and Alt will turn on your view mode if you need to move the camera around. So I'm going to make it nice and small. I do want this to be square, so right now I'm at 3.0 by 2.8. So I'm just going to make this 3 by 3 and then move it up a little bit so I don't have a gap on the bottom. And then I'll hit spacebar 1 to get back into my perspective view. And then to get out of this tool, I'm going to click on the camera icon down here. So now I have a grid. I'm going to give it some UVs. So I'm going to do a UV project and just drag that in here. There we go. And then I'm going to create what's called a maps baker. So I'll create a maps baker. And it is being replaced, but for now, it works great. And it's pretty simple. It has a low resolution geometry input and a high resolution geometry input. And a cage, we don't need the cage. And I'm going to put the leaf into the high resolution and the UV project into the low. If you visualize it, it won't really look much different. I still have the purple flag on for the branch, and this is needed so I can tell Houdini how far away should I look for the high poly geometry, which you can do so if you click on your maps baker. You can turn on this visualize icon and you'll see the little blue grid. This is very similar to in Painter, the max frontal and rear distance. It does max out at 2. If you need to go beyond 2, like I have to go just a little bit beyond 2, you can just type in what you need, so maybe 2.2. So now everything is set up properly for the bake. And for my, let's move this back up a little bit, hopefully. For my leaves, I do have 2 materials. I just have the Quick Labs, or the Labs Quick material for the bark, and the exact same leaf for the leaves that I had on the other one. Just 2 materials at the end of those nodes going into this. So now, when I go back to the mesh baker, I can tell it what I want to bake. And I'm going to go down to generate color. And I don't think we actually going to turn those off and go up here to transfer, diffuse map, and opacity. Those are the 2 that I need. You want to leave it gamma 2.2, don't touch that. And then I'm going to tell it where to go. So I'm going to go to my project folder, which is somewhere. Where did I put it? There we go. And I will call this leaf. And if you do this, let's just do a quick render. It's not going to have anything. And that's because I changed the name a little bit too much. So the output director here, I did Control Z to undo my naming convention. I have a lot of stuff here. It has name, underscore, $, channel, all this stuff. I want to keep the channel and this hip name. It's really just where it's going to save that I want to change. So I'm going to copy, starting the $, bracket, hip name. I'm just going to copy that and then tell it where I want it to go. And then for the file name, I'll paste that in and hit accept, and hopefully that works. And now if I hit render, on the other screen it's telling me it's rendering, and over here I now have a diffuse and an opacity, which didn't seem to work perfectly, so let's figure out what's going on. And it's probably something to do with my UVs. So if I do, there we go, spacebar 5, I'll have my UVs. Spacebar 5, and go to your UV project, and go to your next to transformation, you have initialize, and hit initialize. And that should just kind of give it updated UVs. So now when you go to your maps baker and render, instead of having something that almost worked but was super wrong, you'll have a very simple color and opacity. And the cool thing, since we're baking it down, if you want to go back to your leaf, control or spacebar 1 to go back to the perspective view, you can up the resolution of your leaf because all it's doing is going to be baking down. So if you want to have a lot more segments for it, turn on that quick material and get something that looks a little bit bigger or a little bit better, correct size, you can definitely turn that up a fair amount. If you want more leaves on the final tree, you would just go over here to your labs leaf generator and you can turn up or down the spacing so you have more or less. I'm going to stick with 0.05, but I do have a higher resolution leaf now, which would make the file a lot bigger if I wasn't baking it down to a plane. So I'll just do another render. So it looks very similar, but I do have a little bit more detail here. This is baked out at relatively small 1K. You can change this to next to your resolution on the maps baker to 2K if you want. It'll be a slightly larger file, but we are going into Painter first, so it doesn't really matter. So I might just do a 2K bake just so it looks a little bit better. And now I have something pretty nice. So now, how do we actually use that on our tree? So all of this stuff was just to get a new leaf, pretty much. Instead of having the entire graph for it, we are just going to go back to our little tree right here. And instead of sticking with just a leaf, we're going to change this quick material to the one we just made. And it doesn't look great right now, but you need to load in your opacity. So we're going to load in the opacity texture as well. So now it's going to be have just much more detailed leaves. And then we can go back to the leaf size and have it grow a little bit to make fill in some of that area. There we go. And start getting a really nice looking tree. And you can go back to the leaf generator, and then you can also increase or decrease the amount of leaves present on the tree from there as well. The leaf size and leaf placement will really change it significantly, but do know that the more leaves you have with the leaf node distance, the bigger the file is going to be. Changing the actual size of the leaf will not change your overall tree size. So I'm going to keep it at this, and I'm going to go back to this output geometry and delete that 7 GB tree. Don't want that anymore. And save this one to disk, and let's see how this goes. So a little bit bigger, but not by much. It's now 16.7 megabytes, much better than 7 gigs. And now we can start using this in Maya. Since it's an OBJ, we have to do a little bit of work for the material. I did try just going to export FBX, and none of the other softwares liked it very much. So I'm just using an OBJ, which does require a little bit more manual setup, but it's not too much work at all. Now I have Maya and Painter open, and it's going to bring in the OBJ. Should load in relatively quick. It won't look great because it's going to be all gray, but we don't care about how that part looks. We just want to assign some materials. If you click on it, you might think that these UVs look really bad. Surprisingly, these are exactly what the UVs should look like. They are tiling, so every little segment, so we just select that UV shell, which is just this one, it's going to be tiling perfectly outside of the 0 to 1 space. So surprisingly, it is exactly what we need it to be. There's going to be probably a lot of this other stuff in here. You can delete that. Just need this tree. There we go. And there's a pretty easy way to select all the things we want. All these really tall things are the branches. So I'm going to select them. And I'm going to right click and hold and assign a Lambert to it. I'm going to call this bark. And then most of what you see in here are leaves. There is going to be one that's a little more circular than the others. Those are the end parts for the branches. So those are the tips of the branch. So I'm going to hold down Control and just deselect those. I'm going to assign a new Lambert and call it leaf. And then I do actually want that little circle and assign that to the bark as well. So I should have 2 materials assigned to my tree. If you have a third one, like the OpenPBR default one, let's see if we can figure out what it is. Probably, if you are getting it, hopefully nothing important. And if you can't figure it out, I'm just going to export it again as an FBX this time. And it'll be much easier to find things if there is anything wrong with it when it's in Painter. So I have it as an FBX. I'm going to load it into Painter like anything else. Really need to bookmark this folder. Go. I do have auto UV turned off just in case. So auto unwrap, I have that off. It can save a lot of issues. And it looks like I don't have that other material in here. So it's just a Maya thing. So I can turn off the leaves material and I can see what the tree looks like, or I can just turn on the leaves and see what they look like. You won't see them from the back side. We will fix that later in Unreal. But for now, let's load in the textures we need to make this work. So the first 2 are going to be for the leaves, and that's going to be the diffuse and the opacity that we rendered out. I'll drag that in, mark them as a texture, and it'll be current session, because I don't need these in here all the time. And might as well just do the leaves now. I'm going to make a fill layer. Call it leaf. I need to turn on opacity. So I'm going to go to the shader settings on the top right, choose ASM Metal Rough, and change it to the PBR Metal Rough with alpha blending, which is 3 down on the left. With that, we can now see the backs of our alpha cards. And under texture set settings, I'm going to scroll down a bit and click on the plus sign and turn on opacity. And then I'll have color and opacity turned on this layer, and the color is going to go to the base color, and opacity will go to the opacity. So now we have all those leaves set up. I'm also going to turn on roughness and make them a little bit less shiny. And I'll turn on metal, make sure it's black so that it's non-metallic, and all that should be good. I'll turn off that material now and turn on the bark. And then this time I will drag the bark textures in. And again, I got these from Polyhaven. If you search just for bark on their textures, you have a lot of different tree materials. I'm going to bring in the ambient occlusion, the diffuse, displacement, normal, and roughness. I'll just drag those in, and they're all going to be marked as a texture. Current session again. You don't have ambient occlusion on your material by default, so I'm going to go back to texture set settings and just turn on ambient occlusion. And now I will turn on all of them. So I have base color, we'll go to base color, so we get that wood texture, and it is tiling quite nicely. Only place it won't tile perfectly is where the branches intersect, but that's just how it works. And then the next one, ambient occlusion, I'll drag that on over. Displacement will go into your height. Normal goes into the normal. And then finally, the roughness goes to roughness. So now we have a pretty nice looking tree bark texture going on to all of the limbs. And if we turn on the leaves, we'll have a nice bushy tree. One of the nice things about this method is it can go into Maya, Unreal, Unity, or really anywhere else. And I'm going to go to export textures and export it to correct folder. I'll just copy that, paste that here, and make a new folder for demo textures. And then make sure you export for the correct render engine. I'm doing Unreal. I'm going to do 2K. That'll be just fine. And export. And next step is going to be in Unreal setting it up. Actually, before we get into Unreal, I'm going to go back into Maya. And if it's not already combined into one mesh, if you have multiple meshes, do a mesh combine, because if not, you might have every single leaf and branch come in as a separate model into Unreal or Unity, which would be very inconvenient. All right, so here I am in Unreal. I'm just going to drag my folder with the textures and my tree FBX into Unreal. It is scaled in centimeters, so I'm going to scale up 100 so it's not microscopic in Unreal, and then just hit import. Come back. There we go. I'm going to delete these default materials that it imports with. Don't need them. And what I actually do want to do is find a material we made a while ago for the grass. Let's see, here. Nope, not there. Over here, I have my master material for the golden grass, or whatever materials you made. And I really want this one. Oh, this is instance. But it already has the color variation and the wind speed, and it has the alpha all set up. So I can find the master material for it. There it is. It is this one, which looks a little messy and disorganized. But for that base color, I have the speed tree color variation with a parameter going into the amount, so we can randomize the color a little bit. The material itself is already set to a masked blend mode with two-sided foliage and two-sided turned on, so you can see both sides of the leaves. And then down here, I have these nodes for the wind animation itself going into the simple grass wind. I'm going to use that for the leaves as well. And that one is going into the world position offset. And the cool thing is we can use the exact same material for the trees. So for that material, I'm just going to right click and create material instance. I'm going to call this MI leaves demo. And I'm going to move it just up to content for now. Let's see, too much junk in here. And with that, all you have to do is change the instance and apply the new textures. And conveniently, the FBX version of this tree is just under 3 megabytes. So the OBJ is a lot bigger, the FBX much smaller. You can drag it in, and doesn't look great at first. But I have that material instance, and to make that work, let's make this a little smaller. It's going to turn on the ARM color and normal options, and then for the leaf color, normal, and for the ARM, double click on your texture and make sure you turn off sRGB. And then you can drag that over to the arm. And just while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to do the same thing, sRGB, for the bark. And I should have just another material instance, so I don't have to set up another material somewhere. Rocks. I'm just going to use my master material for the rock because it's just bark, don't need any alphas. So I'll make a material instance, tree bark. Put that in vegetation and trees, demo trees. Cool. I'm going to open that up. This is why having master materials are really helpful. Don't need to remake your material every single time. There we go. Now I'm going to double click on the tree. And I'm going to drag the materials, hopefully, to the correct spot. That was not the correct spot. So, and ignore the fact that they are moving really quickly. That is happening because my wind speed is turned up a lot. So I'm going to bring that down to 0. And if it's still looking a little weird, we are going to fix that, hopefully momentarily. I'm going to remove the material from the tree. Let's... Right, not sure why that other material was freaking out just a little bit. Let's go with. But it's remade the master material. I copy and pasted the color variation with the speed tree color variation and just copy and pasted these nodes exactly and then set up the color with opacity color going into the speed tree and the color going into the subsurface color, which should be that one. There we go. And just assign the master material to it, and it was working just fine. I have a very small wind speed of 0.01 to get a very little bit of wind going through it. You can definitely increase it if you want to, or decrease it. It would be 0.05. There you go. And then with that, you can populate it in your PCG and have some more customizable forests. The color variation, really small values go a long way for the speed tree color variation. A little bit will make it go almost completely white. So definitely use that sparingly. And one other thing that's nice about the Houdini workflow is if we go all the way back to our tree controller, we have a randomize option. And going through it will just give you different versions of a very similar tree. It'll use the same leaves and just a different branch order for everything. So you can have a lot of customization very, very quickly. And that is how you can get some relatively small trees into Unreal. Same process would go for Unity, just different for the leaves, or for the animation for the wind. And you can have a very dense forest very quickly.